So thank you for joining the webinar today. My name is Kalle Jaskinen, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Briefly about the agenda for today. We will start the webinar with a brief introduction to the SSH keys. What are the keys and how they're used and where they're used. After that, I will briefly touch the business drivers we see large enterprises and government organizations facing today regarding the SSH user keys and what will be the key drivers also in the future. After the business drivers, I will introduce our universal SSH key manager solution, basically a solution developed to solve those challenges just described. During the introduction, we'll focus on demonstrating the actual product instead of slides. After the product introduction, there will be a questions and answers session. Please enter your questions to the chat box or Q&A boxes during the session, and we'll take the questions after the official part. Okay, so let's start with the brief introduction to the SSH user keys. SSH as a protocol is among the top 3 protocols, security protocols used in the modern environments. Basically, the SSH is included on each and every Unix installation in the world, and it's also widely used on Windows platforms. When talking about the SSH user keys, it means typically a key pair consisting of a private and public key used to prove users' identities during the SSH authentication process. SSH user keys enable automated authentication process that does not require user interaction, and therefore it is mainly used for automated processes and functional and application IDs, such as the automated file transfers, log gathering processes, backups, and the similar. These can also be used for interactive sessions, such as doing the remote system administration or secure file transfers, and the private keys can also be protected with a passphrase, enabling strong two-factor authentication. Now moving to the business drivers. One of the key business drivers of any IT solution today is that how the solution is able to reduce the cost. On most enterprises, the SSH key management operations are done more or less manually. Key setups, not to mention the removal or the rotation of the keys, is a complex and time-consuming process. As an example, if you take the environment of 20,000 hosts, the estimated operational cost of all the manual key operations, removals, rotations, and everything is close to $4 million per year. Another big driver for the key management is the risk factor. As the process for setting up the keys is manual and taken care by the application teams or even system administrators by themselves, you pretty soon lose visibility who is actually able to access where and using which of the user accounts. SSH is most often used by the most powerful persons in the company accessing the most critical systems in your IT environment, meaning that you really would like to know who is able to access and where. The lack of visibility also makes the removal or rotation of the keys nearly impossible, as you do not know where all the keys are spread and not able to reliably remove or rotate all the key instances. On top of that, there is always the human factor as well. So as we are talking about a manual process, how to ensure that all the nodes of a cluster share the same key data, or that the disaster recovery site has all the keys updated in proper manner. The third driver we see is being very important is the compliance. Basically, the key management processes and procedures are part of basically every modern security standard and the regulatory compliance mandates, including standards PCI DSS or the auditing Sarbanes-Oxley, quality standards ISO 27000, or even the Cloud Security Alliance security guidance of that is putting a lot of focus and effort on the key management side of things, not to mention the HIPAA and other government national security security policies. So those are basically the biggest drivers we see our customers are facing today. Having the cost factor, having the risk factor, and then the compliance issue. We see that there's also a great need in the future for a key management solution, especially in the SSH area. The existing enterprise environment will stay also in the future, but we see that there's a lot of customers going more into a bring your own device and mobile model, where tasks typically done within the corporate environment are now done from other places using the user's own devices and the applications. How to ensure proper access management, how to ensure proper authentication from the third-party devices. On the server side of things, we see a lot of customers putting applications and processing to private and hybrid clouds, and of course virtualizing their environment as much as possible, either doing that in premises or as a hosted service. The more external entities get involved, or the more dynamic the environment is, the more important it becomes to have efficient and reliable access management in place. Here, we here at the SSH have developed a solution to manage the SSH user keys, and the product is called Universal SSH Key Manager. I will show you the product in a bit, but before that, I'll very briefly go through the deployment process of the solution and what challenges each of the steps solves. The first thing you want to know, or the first thing you need to do, is to connect to the environment and gather basically the information of the hosts, users, keys, and the related trust relationships. With that information, you will get the immediate visibility to your SSH environment and basically being able to identify who's able to access and where. And that information can be easily pulled into the compliance reports as well. The next step is basically to lock down the environment. After the lockdown, any key operation done outside of the management, whether it's a new key setup, key removal, or something else, those are all flagged as an unmanaged key operations, and you can enable automatic notifications and send those into your existing tools, meaning that you will get real-time visibility into your key and access control methods. Through the user interface or through the API, you can also enforce manual or fully automatic actions as well, such as automatic removals of the unmanaged keys. And then the last step is to start managing the environment. This means automating all the key operations, new key setups, key removals, and other key operations. The operations can be done through the web user interface or through the fully featured API. The API enables enterprises also to integrate Key Manager as part of their existing IT ticketing, approval, and the change management processes. At this point, I will jump into the product demonstration and show you the product and the process flow with the real product. So as mentioned, the product provides a web user interface, and I'm just logging in as an administrator. The application provides a role-based access control, meaning that you are able to define roles such as administrators, auditors, authorizers, deployers, and the supervisors. I'm an administrator having a supervisor privileges, being able to run basically all the available activities, such as being able to basically authorize the keys, having a global visibility, being able to identify and define the host group information, as well as being able to create and delete the keys as well. Now, as the first step, basically that was to connect into the environment and gather the information. The architecture of the product is very modular. The product is built around a central database that can be either the internal MySQL, or if you have an existing Oracle database, you can use that as well. The discovery and all the management operations in the environment can be done through the agentless or agent-based approach. Depending on your environment and network logistics, you can have one or multiple key manager backends connecting to the same database and connecting to the actual end hosts to ensure that you are able to reach all the endpoints within your environment. As an example here, I will be just adding one host using the agentless connectivity. You can add the hosts into your environment using a single import. You can import a multiple hosts from the list or just copy-paste the information here, or you can scan the IP ranges and identify which of the hosts you want to take under control. I'll just take one. I'll just add one host. Of course, when connecting, we need to enter a credentials. The agentless connection connects to the managed environment using the existing SSH server. Therefore, we need to provide a credentials being able to access that server. You can have a specific account or for the usage, like I do have a key manager account, or you can use some other existing management accounts. The authentication is done either using a password authentication, or if you do have an existing management key, you can use the existing management key as well. To ensure the security of the management key, we only allow passphrase protected keys in this case. I'll just go with the password. And at this point, if you are aware, the grouping information of the host, if it's an Oracle, SAP, whatever server, you can already identify and assign the host into a proper group. I'll just kind of say, thank you. Now what happens is that, scroll down a bit. What happens now is that the key manager connects to the defined hosts and checks the operating system and the SSH versions. Agentless connection uses the existing SSH server, so there are basically zero changes, no changes done into the destination host. All the environment, all the things are exactly as before. No changes, no configuration changes, or no installation of the agent. Zero impact into the managed environment. Now, when we move forward, is that now the key manager connects to the defined host and sets up the public key authentication. So only the initial connection is done using a password or a predefined key. All the future connections are authenticated using the special key manager key. The next step is that the key manager will identify the key locations from the SSH configuration file. And it will check also the user accounts available on that system. After that, basically the key manager user ID switches into a different user accounts and scans the directories of those users to identify all the private and public key information. Almost finished. And there we go. Now we have basically scanned the system, and if we go here into the environment, we can already see that host visible into the interface, and we are able to immediately get information. First of all, who is able to access this specific host, and basically we are also able to see the outgoing authorizations. For example, James from this machine is able to access 3 hosts: Key Manager, CentOS Mini 1, and CentOS Mini 3. You can also get a much more detailed information of the keys by going into the main view of the keys. I'll just expand everything. So basically here you can see a comprehensive list of all the authorizations you have in your environment. For example, Oracle 1 on CentOS Mini 2 is able to access Oracle 1 on CentOS Mini 3. or a chain is able to access Oracle accounts on CentOS Mini 1. You need to have 2 accounts. You can easily filter the data. If you are interested only, for example, on the Mini 1 account, you're able to filter the data easily. Or if you are only interested on the Mini 1 and the Oracle accounts, you're able to see trust relations and the matches of authorizations only related to those. I'll just speed up the filtering and show you one more thing on the user view before we jump into the management of the key. One good thing about the user interface and the product itself is that you can actually find out the orphaned keys as well. So the orphaned keys means that the private key of the key pair is unknown. This means that we have been able to identify the public side of the key, but we haven't found the private key yet. These may be old orphaned accounts or some keys that the private keys are stored, for example, on a USB stick or somewhere beyond the reach of the key manager. So the next step after kind of getting the environment and having the environment under the monitoring is that you basically lock down the environment, meaning that now that your host is on monitored state, you select a single host, multiple hosts, a group of hosts, whatever your environment is, and you basically switch those hosts into a managed state. Now this means that now that the hosts are in managed state, all the existing keys we had in the environment and we still have in the environment are now marked as a legacy keys. If someone tries to set up a new key pair outside of the management, those keys can be automatically noticed as an unmanaged key, and you can enable automatic notifications in such a case. So if someone adds a key or if someone removes a key, you can actually enable real-time notifications into your CM tools, and you can enforce the policies back in place. The authorizations, the trust relationships, can also be created and removed from the user interface. For example, if I want to take a few of the keys away, for example, if I know that, okay, the Oracle application is no longer valid, or that for some reason the batch 1 account should not access John on the key manager account, I can select the keys and the authorizations and basically remove those. What happens is that the key manager now connects into the entity servers and switches in under the right user accounts and basically removes all those keys from the right location. From this point onwards, the user is no longer able to access. So the John is no longer able to access the key manager. The same thing for adding authorizations. So this is just a simple view for adding authorizations. For example, if I want to have a John from CentOS Mini 1 being able to access, let's just use, for example, CentOS Mini 2 and the batch 1 account, and then let's set up a second one as well into the batch 1 account. So you can have one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many authorizations. What's nice about the product is that you can actually define restrictions. So you can define that that key is only valid from this very specific location. Also, if you do have keys for a very specific purpose, such as running a backup procedure, you can limit the commands the key is valid to use. You can use a new keys, which means that basically will generate a new key pair and copy the keys, or you can reuse the existing keys if in place. And of course, then we can have a comment, and then we authorize. If the user is able to authorize, so this all comes in the role-based access control, that you can have certain accounts that are only available to deploy new hosts, and some of the users are able to actually grant the authorizations. and some people may only be able to see key statistics and the auditing purposes, but nothing else. So basically what happens now is that I'll scroll down a bit. Okay, it was done already. So what happens is that basically the key manager connected into the source host generated the key pair and copied corresponding private key into the destination. So now basically all the information, now the new trust relationship and the authorization is all set up and the user is able to access. Very briefly, before we go into the questions and answers, I will show you the API very quickly. So as I mentioned, the product comes with the full-featured API. And basically, it's a web services API, but we have built a reference client, command line tool client around that. So the customers may use the native web services API, or they can use our tool we have built. So I'll just kind of give you a very brief example of the command line tool. So as you can see, you can basically do all the commands, all the activities you can do on the user interface. You can list the information, you can do the reporting, but also you can add authorizations or you can remove authorizations. So all the activities can be done through the user or through the API as well. I just kind of say on the very brief kind of just an example of being able to list the authorizations in the environment. Who's able to access and where. The biggest value of the API is that you can actually integrate this into your existing tools. So what we have seen is that large enterprises would like to use and want to use their existing approval processes and tools. They don't want to have yet another user interface they need to manage. So basically with the API, the key manager becomes the workhorse behind the scenes, automating all the key setups and taking care of the environment, and customers are still able to use their existing tools the way they want. Okay, that was the demonstration part. Back to the slides and the questions and answers. Let me just open up the chat box. Okay. Is SSH Key Manager managed for both user and host keys? Okay. The existing version of a Key Manager takes care of the user keys. As you may notice on the user interface, we already gathered the information of the host keys, and the management of the host keys is planned for the September release. Another question, on a Windows-based system, how is the private key protected at the host level? My understanding is that currently these are flat files and does not appear to be resolved by this tool. Yes, so basically as you are right, so the keys are flat files. So the private key and the public key are small files that are stored on the actual end servers, being a client and the server. The Universal Key Manager basically relies on the operating system restrictions. So for example, if you do have an account like John, by the OS level restrictions, nobody should be able to access the keys except the John. There is on the same thing on the Linux and Unix platforms as well. On the future versions, we will introduce a support for protecting the keys with the passphrase, meaning that you would need to have the key and the passphrase in order to use the key, which meaning that we are able to enforce the two-factor authentication. One more question. What is the cost of the appliance? Okay, so the application comes as a virtual appliance or as a software package. And basically, you can use the existing databases you have in your environment, or you can use the built-in database, the MySQL, that comes in the package. The software version basically runs on the Red Hat Linux-based operating systems, and the whole thing is basically licensed per the number of the hosts you are managing. So if you need a license for 500 servers, if you need to manage a 500 servers, you need to have a license for 500 managed hosts. The same thing with the appliance. The current version doesn't come with the as a hardware appliance. It comes as a software appliance. But in the longer term, we are also planning to introduce a hardware appliance model. One more correction or one more addition into the private key and management of the private keys. I may have forgotten in the beginning, but basically when we create the keys, when we generate the private keys and the public keys, basically the private keys are always generated on the actual source host. So the private keys are never transferred. We only take the fingerprints of the private keys to match those into the corresponding public keys. Okay, there's another one. Can this be used to import both commercial and open SSH keys, and what versions of SSH do you support? Yes, so the Universal SSH Key Manager supports Tectia and the open SSH keys, and we, per the customer requests, we are actually implementing some other third-party SSH solutions into the picture as well. For the Tectia, we support the 5 and 6 series Tectia SSH, and for the Open SSH, we support all the 4 series upwards, but there is no real reasons why it shouldn't work with the older versions as well. Does it work with AIX, Linux, Sun, HPUX? Yes, it does. So basically, we support the Windows platforms using the agent, and the Linux, Unix, AIX, Linux, Sun, and HP through the agentless, as well as through the agent connectivity. On the Unix flavors, AIX, Sun, and HP, you can use either OpenSSH or the commercial version, or even the native OS provided, like the Sun SSH type of an SSH. How long does it take to import 5,000 keys, and is there a limit how many keys can be managed? There are basically no limits into how many keys can be managed. We have a largest customers deploying this product have a tens of thousands of hosts. The application itself provides a 100 concurrent jobs. So basically, you can run a 100 concurrent scans or discoveries at the same time. So importing 5,000 keys should not take too long. Is there support for mainframe ZOS? Yes, the mainframe ZOS will be introduced on version 1.1 coming in September. Is it compatible with the OpenSSH? Yes, we support the OpenSSH as well from 4 and 5 series as well. How recover the SSH master in case of failure? Should be implemented double master. Yeah, so the architecture by nature, as I mentioned, it's modular, meaning that you can have several backends. And basically, if one of the backends goes down, the other backends can take the load. So basically, the high availability is provided by the architecture of the product. Do I need to have passwords and or passphrases for all the keys? No, you don't. So basically, Key Manager works with null passphrase keys, meaning that there are no passphrases. If there are some passphrases in the keys, we can't read the key information, and therefore we are not able to match those into the corresponding public keys. Even though you currently can't manage third-party SSH clients, can you discover them and see their connections, etc.? As I mentioned, we are working with the Tectia and the OpenSSH at the moment, but per the customer requests, we are also implementing additional support for other third-party clients and the servers, but that comes as per the customer need. Can you enforce passphrases for the private keys? At this point, in the current version, the product works with the no passphrase keys, meaning that there are no passphrases. It is on the longer-term roadmap to start actually enforcing the passphrase protection on the keys as well. Does this work with user management software? Not sure about the user management software application, but basically the API can be integrated to any tool using the web services or through the command line. So as long as the tool in question is able to issue a command line of commands or being able to use a web calls with our API, the integration should be possible. Okay, if there are no other questions at this point, I will thank you for your time. I hope you found the webinar useful for you. And here is the contact details. So you can go to www.ssh.com and go for the key manager, download the data sheets and white papers for more detailed information and further reading, or then just connect our sales at sales@ssh.com. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you on the next webinars. Thank you. Bye-bye.